There is something peculiar about being created in God's image, not just being a craft of His creation, but the very portrait of His being. It makes the term human have more value than what we credit it for. I mean, we often associate humanity with weakness, failure, or fault. How many times do we say, "But I'm only human," whenever faced by seemingly impossible or just frustrating tasks? Yet the blueprint from whence we came is perfection itself, at least from a biblical sense. Welcome to the first episode of Portrait Stories, a subsidiary of the King Christian, where I draw portraits in an attempt to draw us closer to God, closer to who we are modeled after. And just maybe, by the time I am done with this drawing, you might end up looking a little more like God's portrait. Today's topic, trusting the hands of the artist. I'll admit, drawing portraits is difficult, needs a lot of patience, takes a lot of time. And sometimes, especially in the early stages of the drawing, it can be a little stressful. Usually because that is when it looks farthest from what you envision the whole portrait to be like. And whether it's an abstract drawing or one with a reference like this one, you often end up needing to trust the process. Trust that with time, the pencil strokes, if in the artist's hands, will soon make a masterpiece. And in a similar tone, such is the work of God. It needs a lot of time, and at first it really doesn't make sense. And it's all scribbly and unclear. Ask Joseph, he knows. They lived in a tent. As a matter of fact, by the time Joseph's mother, Rachel, was pregnant with who would be his younger brother, his father, Jacob, hadn't moved out of his master's, Laban's house. So you might say Joseph was born a slave son. But they were okay. That is, until his mother died while giving birth to Benjamin. We would think that that's the worst that could happen, but it was only the beginning. As you all know, he escaped being murdered by his brothers by a whim, was sold to some Ishmaelites who then sold him to the Egyptians. And then he went from being a slave son to being a slave himself. If you think about it, drawing a portrait is rather painful for the pencil. One of the silent rules about pencil drawing is that, except for a few occasions, the pencil must be razor sharp, and that would obviously need a lot of sharpening. And sharpening is painful. Getting rid of those pencil shavings is painful. Shavings you thought were critical to the pencil but would only get in the way of making the pencil sharp enough to do its work. And Joseph would have to go through a lot of sharpening. Truth be told, he was a cocky kid, one that needed some growing up to do, and the responsibilities in his servanthood kind of took care of that cockiness. But there was one more thing he needed to take care of, and that was his integrity. I believe most of you know the story of Potiphar's wife and how much, like today's world, Joseph, a man, ended up in jail because of a woman's false allegations. He suffered for his integrity, and you would think that he would receive his reward from God. And so he thought also, especially after he interpreted the cupbearer's dream, prophesying his release from prison. And so he thought as he waited for his freedom, having told the cupbearer to remember him when he went back to serving Pharaoh. And waiting, he did wait for 2 years. Some commentaries and non-canonical sources say it was a punishment from God. Why? Because he relied on the cupbearer rather than God. But whether it was God's punishment or the cupbearer's forgetfulness, I think we can all agree that, like the pencil, he was definitely shaved. I mean, he was in prison. Get it? I don't know what Joseph did to deserve all that. I don't know what I did to deserve what I go through sometimes. All I know is that as long as I'm in the artist's hands, then it's all going to be worth it. You know why? Because there's something beautiful about drawings. Towards the end, from afar off, you begin to see the final picture, and suddenly all the strokes you had penciled before begin to make sense. Whether the pencil breaks and you have to sharpen it a few times, or there's an error and you have to erase it, as long as it's in the artist's hands, you surely have your drawing at the end. And oh, what a masterpiece it will be. I wonder what Joseph felt like when his life changed in a day, when the slave became the king, or his advisor at least. I wonder what happened when the struggles he suffered in secret were vindicated in public, when the tears he shed in his closet with God were wiped away for all to see. Listen, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but what I do know as an artist is to trust in the hands of the artist, and my encouragement is for you to do the same. Put your trust in Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, and may the God who hears you in secret, who listens to your groans when you can no longer talk, bring you to the perfection that is Him. God bless.